श्री राम जय जय राम।
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 जय जय राम जानकी 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 राम।
जानकी राम।
जानकी राम।
जानकी राम।
जानकी राम।
निस्यावर रामचंद्र की
जय।
पवन सुत हनुमान की
जय।
बोलो भाई सब संतन की
जय।
सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। राम राम सीता राम राम
सीता राम।
राम राम सीता राम
राम राम सीता राम।
राम राम सीता राम
राम राम सीता राम।
पूर्ण काम परम धाम।
पूर्ण काम परम धाम।
पूर्ण काम परम धाम।
पूर्ण काम परम धाम।
राम राम सीता राम।
राम राम सीता राम।
राम राम मधुर नाम।
राम राम मधुर नाम।
राम राम मधुर नाम।
राम राम मधुर नाम।
शंकर मन रमत राम।
शंकर मन रमत राम।
शंकर मन रमत राम।
शंकर मन रमत राम।
भक्तन के जीवन राम।
भक्तन के जीवन राम।
भक्तन के जीवन राम।
भक्तन के जीवन राम।
पूर्ण करत सबके काम।
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 राम राम सीता राम।
राम राम सीता राम।
राम राम सीता राम। ये सियावर रामचंद्र की
जय।
हरे रामा राम रामा हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे। हरे रामा राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे। Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. श्यावर रामचंद्र की
जय।
राधावर कृष्ण चंद्र की
जय।
Hari Om. The class is at 7 o'clock, right? Hope they all join. We still have about a minute, so that's okay. We are in this particular book. This is the Self-Unfoldment. As stated here very clearly that it is the chapter 3 worlds, which is chapter 14. So that chapter 14 is what we will be looking into. We have seen one half of it. We will be we'll be starting from the 3 states, which is the topic. 3 worlds, 3 states, and we will accordingly set the pace and make sure that we go through the entire chapter today. We should conclude it today. Without much ado, let us begin with our invocation. And for the overwhelming participation that I see today, Harigaru, you take upon the Hanuman Chalisa, be ready with it. And Divya, be ready with 3 times Mahamrityunjay mantra at the end. And then I'll do the conclusion. Okay, let's begin. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. As they say, der I durust I, meaning though a little tad bit late, but I'm glad to see you're all here. So we are in the 14th chapter, 3 worlds, and last week I went through the 5 layers of Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya, and how to transcend these. Then I went through the 3 bodies: gross, subtle, and causal body. Very technical, this whole chapter, and the ones coming after this. Up until here, it was more conceptual, but here onwards, it is going to be very technical words and jargon and concepts. So pay attention. Glad in your times you get to watch it, rewatch it, watch it again and again, because it gets broadcast on YouTube, so you can catch up on it later. So we have already seen the 3 bodies. The food sheath and the vital air sheath, or the pranamaya, come under the gross body. The intellectual and the manomaya, they come under the subtle body. Then the bliss sheath or the deep sleep is also known as the causal body. Now the same concept is viewed in a different dimension, a different group of classification. Why? In each one of these classifications, there is a certain aspect of it which is compared as a baseline, and that baseline is evaluated in all 3 states. The point being that more than the discussion on the 5 sheets, the 3 bodies, or the 3 fields of experiences, it is the substratum, the conscious principle, that is where our attention is drawn into, brought into. That is what is to be understood and assimilated. That is the purpose of this discussion. That these layers, however intimately I feel that I am close to these, are only layers of equipment. So with that in perspective, let's go into the 3 states. Jagrad avastha, swapna avastha, and sushupti avastha. Jagrad avastha is the waking world, the world that where I have my organs of perception action active, mind and intellect active, memory is active, and with that I interact with the world outside. As we have learnt, the word for thought is vritti, and this vritti is what the mind layer is made up of. This vritti, when it expresses out, there are only few methods in which it can express out: through the organs of action, or through the organs of information gathering. This is the only 2 fields in which it can run out. But yes, the gates are multiple. Total of 10 gates that are available. There are 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. So this vritti, when it expresses outside, externally, it's called pravritti. Prakatita vritti. Prakarshena prakatita vritti. In Sanskritam, that is how you would define it. The thought, when it loudly expresses forth through these organs of perception and action, it becomes expressed. That which is expressing in this interactive world, in either gathering or doing something with the data and information that I've gathered, that interactive field of functionality is called the waking world, where all the organs of perception action are actively engaged. It's only in the human birth where all the faculties are functional. And with each one of them, I have a specific field with which I function. And each one of these organs, they do not overlap into others' fields. The ears must be hearing now, but because the ears are not paying attention, the mind doesn't route it now through the nose. कान से नहीं सुनूंगा, मैं नाक से सुनूंगा, नहीं होगा. It has its own specific field in which it functions. The sounds function through the ears, the smell functions through the nostrils, the taste functions through the jihva or the tongue, then the seeing functions through the eyes. If you observe, all of them are right here. That is why this is called the central processing unit of this system, and it is called the Uttamanga. Head is also known as Uttamanga. Why? Most of the processing aspects are here. And the last one, the fifth one, is spread all across. Wherever there is skin, there is the perception of touch technology. Today, when we have these gadgets, in these gadgets we can, it's tactile functioning, where it can haptic touch and other things. That is already there, right? It's there in this system which was designed. So I can, very sensitive, I can assess the temperature, cold and heat. I can assess smooth and hard, smooth and rough, hard and soft. The various dualities I can easily assess through this sense of touch. If you are in a wilderness and there is a tiny spider that gets onto the back of your ear and then starts crawling you, like, if you're scared of spiders, I'll change the example. A bug, let's not name the bug. A bug, and it and you feel that, and immediately you like, what happened? Because the touch, you feel it. So all this data goes in. Wherever this happens, that this data received, and with that it is processed. The mind, intellect, and the memory is actively functional, and through that the outside field, I then interpret it and jump into action. That whole field is called Jagrat Avastha. Comprehend? Now the next stage is the stage wherein sometimes we are in this self-created, amazing, beautiful world. It is called the dream world. Yes, we can also every day morning get up and say, I have a dream. But you are talking about the dream world that which you just got out of. What is this dream world? First of all, with respect to the baseline that I have created in the earlier realm, the understanding should be that here the physical organs of perception, action, the faculties have come to rest. There is no interaction with the outside. It is a field of experience where my own mind becomes the almighty powerful creator. With respect to the dream world, who is the creator, sustainer, destroyer of that dream world? Moi. I am the maker of that dream world. My mind is the maker of that world. So, Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananji, he used to say that most of these dreams are unfulfilled desires of this waking world, sometimes subconsciously get projected into the dream world. I have a very fertile imagination, so I go random. Supposing somebody has diabetes, they're sweet from inside, they have a sugar factory inside, right? So they are forbidden from eating any more sugar. Why? It can mess the system up. The doctors vouch for it. Now, if you are eating sugar, it is not something that will lead you to diabetes. But definitely, if you have diabetes, it can topple the system if you partake in a lot of candy, sugar, ice cream, and other things. You will be screaming for the rest of your life. So poor fellows are restricted. Everybody else is enjoying around them. And what I come to know is, even if you are somebody that did not enjoy sweets, but after diabetes, you start liking it more. You start craving for it more. But there is a pratibandha, there is a restriction. And because of that restriction, what do? You see, you may restrict me from the outside world, but inside, I'm the king. I can visualize a lot of things. So what do I visualize in the dream? I have a beach party. How is that beach? It is oceans of kheer. Big, big waves. Oceans of kheer. Sands of suji halwa. Aha. Mountains of laddus and Mysore paks. I'm glad I'm not a sweet tooth person, so nothing of what I'm describing affects me. But I see a couple of you like, Swamiji, this is not right. Just around the dinner time, you are describing the mouth-watering stuff. And then you are sipping, say, nimbu pani with a hula hoop of, those, not the Arabian, what do you call them? Hawaiian. The hula hoop of jalebi around you, or nobody to restrict you there, right? You can visualize all of it. That which is not fulfilled is usually projected into the dream world. Puja Guruji used to give an example. When I was in the Brahmachari training course, I remember this example, and every time I think of it, I just roll on the floor laughing. There was a Brahmachari, and he was going from village to village. He was walking from the one destination to the other. So he stopped by at a village, asked for alms. Somebody fed him, so he went to the nearby, well. Usually the well is under a huge banyan tree or a peepal tree. So he would draw some water, freshen up, take a glass of water and sit down and eat. And as he was eating, there was a procession that went by. There was probably a temple nearby. A procession was going towards that temple. It was the bride and the groom. So whenever there is that barat, there is a lot of dance and music, and they are on the horse or the palanquin, as the case may be. So as he was watching that procession pass by, he finished his eating and neend lag gayi. He fell asleep. And in the dream, brahmachari, right? So he dreamed of his own marriage. And in that, they were like having a discussion. Honey, the after marriage they call each other honey, to remind each other that we have to be sweet to each other, probably. But I have a different meaning to it. The root word is, I see it in Sanskritam. The root word is hana. To get under each other's skin, to destroy each other. So they were like, honey, we will soon have our children. What would be our probable names for each other? I mean, like the boy child or a girl child, what would be the names? And in that discussion, the discussion became an argument became a fight, and then they were sitting on the couch or the bed or wherever, she gave him a nudge, and he fell off the sofa, only to realize that he fell into the well, because he was sleeping right next to it, right under the tree. He fell into the well, got up and said, thank goodness. If the dream wali can throw me into the well, what would happen in the real world? I said, Sadguru, protect me. And the point is, that which is seen as an impression from the waking world is often taken in a jumbled way. And in that jumbled way, you start projecting that in your own creation, with your own creativity. Supposing you don't like the tiny veins of these creepers, especially the watermelon, honeydew, not Mountain Dew, what is the other one? Cantaloupe. When I said instead of honeydew, the Mountain Dew was coming in my head. Anyway, so all these big fruits on tiny little creepers, and I said, Bhagwan, kya anyay hai? Poor little creeper has to now sustain this big fruits. And look at the banyan tree, has small fruits. You do not have proportionality, man. In my world, I will create a world wherein the banyan tree will have as big the banyan tree, that big a fruit. And the small little creepers will have small fruits. Equity. So thinking thus, the brahmachari fell asleep under the same banyan tree still. He woke up, and a little wind and these fruits fall. Then he realized, Bhagwan, thank goodness you did not heed to my advice. I'm glad you have the small creepers and these big fruits are lying on the floor already and not hanging from the tree, because if they had fallen from there, I would not have been a witness to, be humbled. So whatever we experience here, we jumble it up in our as a source for the dream world, swapna avastha. But the key point is, the organs of perception action have withdrawn from their functionality. Now comes the most amazing phase. That which can consume us even in an engaging discourse, we can fall into that slumber. It's called sound sleep. Why? Sleep for yourself and sound for everybody around you. Snore away to glory. Now, what is happening in that phase? Even that progression, right? The progression is first the waking world, all the organs of action, all the organs of perception, mind, intellect, memory, all of it is functioning. When you move down to the dream world, the organs of perception, action, the externalities have been withdrawn. Only the internal projection. In the deep sleep, even that internal projection of the Antakarana is withdrawn. There is no more movement. All that the witness can watch, illumine, is absence of movement of any kind. That absence of movement of any kind, internal or external, complete cessation. That's why I say to people that are so keen to practice spirituality with the definition that all the practice of spirituality is to get to a no mind state. Oh, but no mind state is not a spiritual state that Vedanta describes. Why? The no mind state is or can be reached without any spiritual effort. Do a handsome day's work, come back home, eat sumptuously, your body is tired, your mind is relaxed, and you fall asleep. In that deep sleep, you have transcended the mind. There is only air going in and out. There may be disturbances. There may be sounds. There may be people talking, TV running. Who has turned the TV on? You yourself had turned it on. You sat in front of it in the couch and there's a war, epic war scene happening. Where are you? You have transcended all these. You have reached to a state of no mindness. The mind is not functioning there. That is called deep sleep. So what are the three states? The three states are the waking, dream, and deep sleep. Many people come and ask me, Swamiji, I dreamt that I was dying in my dream. What does it mean? It means be thankful, you are awake and you are alive. No, what is the significance of it? It was a dream. Meaning an unreal projection. To that unreal projection, what validity and value do you want to add to find a significance of it? Yes, in the field of psychology, go to Freud, go to Simon Freud, or what is the other one? Carl Jung. Go to them, they will start interpreting your dreams for you. But according to Vedanta, the dream world has no significance other than it being a mere projection of your own mind. Now let me switch gears. There is a very beautiful story of the Guru, the dialogue between the Guru Ashtavakra and his student Janaka Maharaj. Ashtavakra, he was born with deformities to this body, physically. 8 different deformed angles of the body. So as he went into the king's court, Janaka was a great king. And the greatness of that king's court was everybody in that court was a realized master. Can you imagine a kingdom run where the king is realized, his courtiers are realized? How dharmically that whole country must have been run. Amazing. So when Ashtavakra reaches in, there are some newbies, fresh rookies. They look at Ashtavakra and his deformed body and start laughing at him. In today's world, you would call it as body shaming. Body shamed. So he turned around and looked at everybody and then turned to the king again and he said, I thought that this court entertained great visionaries, but seems like this whole court is filled with leather tan workers. जूते बनाने वाले चमार से भरे हुए हैं. The king, it was like a wake-up call, like a slap into his face. Why? Because those whose drishti is only at a skin level, see only at that skin level, and not ever transcend it, and get distracted by the deformities of this body at the skin level. If not you call them a shoemaker, what else will you call them? So the king immediately appointed him as his guru, and they used to have a lot of discussions. One day the king comes into the gathering and he says, like in the middle of the night, he calls all of them. Like he wakes up in the middle of the night and he calls all the courtiers, and usually it is some kind of an emergency meeting. So everybody drag themselves to the court and they think that there's some kind of an impending war or some strategy that has to be thought through. The king opens the meeting and he says, I had a dream. And everybody rolls their eyes like, you had a dream, go back to sleep. Why do you have to disturb my sleep? The king had a very profound question on his dream. It was not like, what is the significance of my dream? No. His question was, let me explain my dream. In my dream, I saw myself as a beggar who was famished, didn't have food for 4 or 5 days, and the pangs of hunger was very painful. And somebody pushed me away from that gate, and with that jolt, I woke up to find myself to be this King Janaka. Look at those who can process their thoughts, their thinking is of a different texture altogether. The question is not, please tell me the significance of the dream. His question was, in my dream, which appeared very real, I was a beggar. Now that I am asking this question in the waking, this appears very real. In reality, what is real? In actuality, what is real? Is King Janaka real or the beggar real? If you look at it, somebody who's poor wants to dream of being a king. So from that standpoint, it sounds right. Which one is real? Is the beggar real? Is the king real? So there, Ashtavakra very beautifully analyzes. He says, O king, neither one of them are real. As much as the beggarness is a projected reality, so too the kingness is a projected reality. Let that sink in. As much as the beggar is a reality, the kingness is also a projected reality. projected reality of wrong identification. Wrong identification of what? We identify with this gross body and subtle body and behave as though we are that limited being. That is how we are trained, that is how we are tutored, that is how we are conditioned. We teach the little kid, Monu kahan hai? And that fellow is like, and the mother feels so happy year to year beam and said, Monu beta, identified yourself. So right from that age, we are teaching the conditioning. And what is that conditioning? That you are this body, this physical. I'm told. Okay. Let's put Vedanta aside for a while. Let's take the field of anatomy and physiology. The doctor's field, okay? I am told that from the skin to the subskin particles, muscle, bone, marrow, everything is made up of cell, and no cell can be eternally long surviving. Right? Over a period of 7 years, the entire particles that make this physical body, inside, outside, every aspect of it has had a rehaul and a complete change. That which I was 7 years ago, I am not the same after 7 years. It's a complete new you. Isn't it? Every pore, every cell has changed. And whenever you go to India or meet somebody from your family or relatives, one of the common statements is, "Arey, bahut badal gaye ho beta. You've changed." What do you mean? I'm like a stone or what? It's an organic thing, it will change. And biologically speaking, it definitely is not just a morph, but it is a complete rehaul of the entire system. That which I was born with, after 7 years, the entire thing has changed. 14th year, it has changed. I mean, it may not be exactly, each one has its own cycle and it changes. But I'm giving you a grossness of the example just so that we can calculate. By 70th year, you have changed 10 times. स्वामी जी, आपने कहा था. किस आपने? You had said, Swami ji. Which me? Which Swami? Because 7 years ago, that fellow finished. There is no trace of that fellow. It's like imagine it like a relay race. Right? They have that wand in their hand. They run, and then while running, they hand it out to the next fellow, and this fellow stops, seizes, and the next fellow charges in. So the new cell is made, and the cell is given the cell memory, and the old cell dies, a parting gift to the new one. And then I'm making it a little dramatic. The old Hindi movie में होता था ना, that when somebody dies, there is a lamp and the lamp flutters and then so with every cell, it happens quite regularly. And he handed down the cell memory, and once that cell memory is done, the fellow dies, and it is flushed out of the system. The nails, the hair, the follicles, all of this is the dead cell coming out. Oh, dead cell, when you look at the nails. And probably that is why we have so much of Yamoha to the nails. Like, we make manicure and pedicure and maintain it, and the old self is growing out. And you are like, oh, thank you. You have been there for me. I'll take care of you as much as possible. And that which is already ridiculous, I'm making it even more ridiculous. Biologically also it doesn't make sense because it is changing. It is not a state of permanency, it is constantly changing. And that which is changing cannot be your true nature. So what is it that has to be focused upon when you withdraw from all of this? Is to focus on one's own true nature, that which is permanent, that which is eternal, that which is the very source of bliss, source of happiness, Ananda Ghana. But if we are only attached to this, wherever our attachments are higher, that is where the mind gets distracted to. Isn't it? In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we have already seen it. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. Wherever there is that sense of identity that happens with the body or the extended world outside, that is what I start craving, that is what I start working for, that is what I try to protect, that is what I try to snatch, that is what I try to... The whole world starts revolving there. Detached from it. Now this very substratum, the conscious principle, pay attention, okay? I'm switching gears here. This substratum, the conscious principle, is not just unique to you and me. It is this very conscious principle which is the substratum of every aspect of creation out there. Another subtle theological difference between the dharmic meaning the Hindu Sanatana Dharma Vedic foundation versus the Abrahamic. This creation, after having created, God went into heaven. He has gone separate. He has got nothing to do with this creation. This creation is meant for the exploitation and indulgences of the man who has the soul. Rest of them have life but no soul, therefore you can exploit them and enjoy them. Meant for that purpose. Therefore they call it a blasphemy when you take that aspect of creation and make it worship worthy. That is which is supposed to be like the not worthy of comparison to the Almighty. You are picking that up and comparing it to be the Almighty. It is like reducing the greatness of that Almighty. Therefore, you are committing a blasphemy. Whereas in the Hindu Sanatana Dharma, what do we say? Kana kana mein basa Rama. That in every aspect of being, there is only that Paramatma. The substratum is that Paramatma. Now at this individual level, we call this as conscious principle. I'm not talking of the jiva, the individuality. That which is the substratum of the individuality as well is this conscious principle. And at the totality level, where the entire creation put together, now when I say creation, There is known creation, there is unknown creation, there is that which is tangible creation, intangible creation, manifest creation, unmanifest creation. And it is not just about this solar system or this galaxy system or this Milky Way. This is only a tiny speck. Like this systems, there are parallelly multiverses. This is what we believe in Hinduism, where every form of Ishvara is worshipped as Ananta Koti Brahmanda Nayaka. Ananta Koti Brahmanda. Brahmanda is one system of expression. Like that, there are infinite number of creations. For all of that put together, there is one substratum who we call as Paramatma. That Paramatma, that substratum as well, is nothing but that existential principle alone, without which nothing can be experienced, nothing can be seen, nothing can be ever existing, because it is the very nature is existential principle. And that very existential principle is my nature as well. The one who realizes this, that this conscious principle is that Paramatma alone, knowing and being in it, and then firmly abiding in it. That is the pinnacle of our spiritual unfoldment. That is what we call as moksha. That is what we will call as Atma Sakshatkara. Now then, how did this creation come to be? Now here, I'll tell you a subtle difference. In the Western mindset, whether it is theological mindset or scientific mindset, their idea of pursuing everything about this creation is to prove the validity of this creation. That this creation exists, and I want to reverse engineer this whole thing so that whenever required, I can create whatever I can for the long sustenance of me, the individual. Whereas when in the Hindu sacred books, in the Hindu Vedic literature, whenever creation is talked about, it is not talked about from the standpoint of proving the creation as real. That is not the purpose. Then what is the purpose of this description of this creation? Is to identify that the substratum of this entire creation is that conscious principle, and that conscious principle is my true nature. Because of that, there is a oneness with this creation. That is what we call as oneness. We are not talking the oneness from the standpoint of this multitude and we try to identify the oneness. Oh, you also have head, I also have head, you also have hands, I also have hands. You also like dosa, I also like chutney. No. This is not the commonality or oneness that we are trying to see. The oneness or the commonality is there is one source, one substratum, removing which there is nothing that can exist. That source is the core of my own being, and that is my true nature. To prove that, the concept of creation is taken into picture. Not to justify that the creation is valid, the creation and the system of creation is to be authenticated. Otherwise, we'll fall trap. What is the next trap that we will jump into? The Darwinian theory of creation, the Big Bang, and these are all hypotheses. yet to be proven. They've projected these thoughts. But at least I'll give it to the scientists in the field of scientists. Those scientists are genuinely humble people. Why? They do not claim that whatever they have understood or digested or express as their concepts as an ultimate reality. They themselves very humbly say, this is a narrative, a concept, a hypothesis that I have projected. It can be worked upon, it can be bettered, it can be investigated to find something more comprehensive than what I have. That humility they come with. But most of us, when we hear this concept, we solidify this hypothesis into a construct of reality and we fall trapped to it. To such a point that many Hindus jump to the conclusion that there is this Darwinian theory of evolution, and when you look at the Dashavatara, it matches somewhere. Therefore, the Dashavatara is the very evolution of this whole system, and it matches. It is scientific. It is Darwinianly approved theory. नहीं है वैसे. Like if you go through Bhagavatam, what is the first avatara? The first avatara is not Matsya avatara. The first avatara is not Kurma avatara. Kurma means the tortoise. Matsya means the fish. But then we chant, no Swamiji, in the Dashavatara Stotra, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha. See, in Sanskritam, you can reorganize it based on the chanda or the meter. The meaning doesn't change. Like how the meaning changes when you change the sequence of words in a sentence. Rama killed Ravana. Change the sequence. Ravana killed Rama. The meaning changes. In Sanskritam, that does not happen. Ramaha Ravanam Hanti. Hanti Ravanam Ramaha. You put that word anywhere, the meaning will not change. Then what is the actual sequence of the Dashavatara? Harigaru, what is the first avatara?
Is it Varaha Swamiji?
Yes. That is why the Varaha Avatara is called Adi Avatara or Adi Varaha Avatara. Adi means the first, the very beginning one of the Avatara system. And it is not limited to only 10. So there is this over exuberance of enthusiasm to jump and try to prove everything as scientific. That reminds me of that my big fat Greek wedding, not geek wedding, Greek wedding, where the father is jumping to, give me anything. I will tell you why it is, the origin of it is, and any word given, he'll say, kimono. I think that is the example, right? Kimono, and he goes, kimo, and then he says, that which... No, we are not desperately trying to do that. That is not the purpose of it. Then why is this creation? Is to understand that the substratum is that conscious existential principle, and that conscious existential principle is the core of my own being, my own true nature. Realizing that alone is called moksha. Just because you wear these kinds of clothes, put different kinds of tika on your forehead, and put a beaming smile on your face, that doesn't make you realized. I can even organize a halo behind. Like, how they show the pictures. There's a hollow behind, and then there is. No, ऐसे नहीं होता. Realization is only when I come to the understanding and experience subjectively that I am that conscious principle, which is the substratum of this entire creation. So that Parabrahma Paramatma is indivisible. Ekam. Advitiyam, one without a second. I would not even translate Advitiyam as none like it. Why? When you say none like it, that means there is something other than it and it is not comparable. When I say there is one without a second, meaning there is nothing else other than it to compare. One without a second. Ekam Advitiyam. Purnam. Purna meaning that which is complete unto itself. Must be pretty boring. No. Ananda Ghanam. Ananda Ghanam is throbbing forth with bliss, overflowing with bliss. Ananda Ghanam. Now that Parabrahma Paramatma has infinite potential of strength. That strength is called, that strength aspect of that Paramatma is called Maya, Shakti, inseparable aspect of that Parabrahma Paramatma, that supreme. That inseparable aspect, though is inseparable, Paramatma can exist without that Shakti. How can it be? Now I have the Shakti to speak. Can I exist without speaking? In next few minutes, that is where I'll go. Right? Class ends, my speech ends. Just because the speech ends, do I stop being existent? No. My Shakti can be withdrawn, but I still continue to exist. I, the conscious principle, is independent of this Shakti. But if I have to express out, the expression can happen only through this Shakti. The moment this Paramatma identifies with his Shakti, that state is called totality or Ishvara. That Ishvara, when tries to express itself as this creation, that possibilities of multitude envisioned before it expresses into creation is called Hiranyagarbha. Don't jump too hastily to translate it into golden womb. No, it is a womb of golden opportunities, meaning multitude galore. There is no limit to it. Again, another difference between the Abrahamic and the Hindu school of thought is there is limited number of individuals, souls in the Abrahamic. We say there is no limitation. Just like in the oceans, there is no limit for number of waves. How many waves are there? The immediate answer should be infinite is a possibility. Similarly, for the expression of these jivas, the number of individuals, there is no limit to it. Infinite. Why? The source is infinite. The expression will also be infinite. Because if from the source there is any finitude that expresses, the source was never infinite to begin with. That is the mantra we chant at the end of every class. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasishyate. I am not ending the class, it is just taking it as an example. That from infinite, you take away anything, that which you take out remains infinite, and that from which you have taken still remains infinite. If you can pluck finitude out of it, that means that from where you have plucked was never infinite to begin with. That is the kind of Purnatvam that we talk of. Purnatvam, completeness. So Hiranyagarbha expresses from the golden womb of opportunities, multitude galore. And that which finally becomes tangibly expressed is this multitude which is called Virat. This Virat, therefore, for a Hindu, whether it is a paper or a pin or a cell phone or a battery or anything for that matter, sentient, insentient, doesn't matter. All of it is worship worthy because it is the very expression of that conscious principle. Tree is worship worthy, river is worship worthy, mountain is worship worthy, stone is worship worthy, animals are worship worthy. Fellow human beings are worship worthy. Again, another difference between the Abrahamic and Hindu thought is only certain human beings have a soul. That is why they could have an enslaved environment, that they could enslave those who they considered or defined did not have soul. Therefore, they are to be exploited. Therefore, they could be enslaved. The rest of us, the brown, the black, and everybody else, they could be enslaved because their definition, soul was only with certain. The animals don't have soul, therefore it can be exploited for their own enjoyment. It has life alone. But whereas for you and me, in the Hindu school of thought, in the Sanatana Dharma Vedic literature, what does it say? That every aspect of this creation, whether sentient or insentient, is nothing but an expression of that Paramatma alone. One of the first shlokas that you ever end up learning when you come to Chinmaya Mission is Guru Stotram. And what is the first shloka of that Guru Stotram? Akhanda Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Akhanda Mandalakaram, thus that homogeneous mass of conscious principle. Where can I find it? Vyaptam Yena Characharam. It is there everywhere. Where is it not? That who refuses to see Paramatma even in the sentient is called Hiranyakashipu. The inability to see Paramatma in the sentient. When we talk of Rakshasas and Asuras, who is that Asura? Hiranyakashipu. The one who refused to see Paramatma in even the sentient. Who is Prahlada? His son, the greatest devotee. The one who could see that Paramatma both in the sentient and in the insentient. And when demanded by his father, Hiranyakashipu, is that Bhagavan of yours in this pillar? And out came Nrsimha Bhagavan from that pillar. So at the end of this, I would like to propose a question and leave it at that. Where do we want to be? A Hiranyakashipu or a Prahlada? Not because the feel-good factor, from the conceptual understanding of it. Because that is where we put our effort and that becomes our sadhana. Clear? I think I'll stop here. Arre wah, kya timing hai? 1 minute extra, but I stopped. So since we are already out of time, today we will not chant both Hanuman Chalisa and the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. We'll just conclude with the Shanti Patha. If you have any questions, please ask them in the group and I'll try to answer as you post the questions. So the next week, please post your questions and they will be used to. I'll collate all of them and I'll try to answer them next week. So you have 2 weeks worth content to mull over and shoot all kinds of questions that you can. See, one thing that you're losing by this attending of self-unfoldment. Later, you should never ever be saying to anybody again that Hinduism is so confusing. We were looking for answers. We were never given answers. I'm challenging you to ask questions. Thereby, you lose the right to complain about our Hindu ways. Later saying, "Arey yaar, we never got an opportunity. Nobody explains Hinduism." No, I am here. I will put every effort to get back to you with an answer. So therefore, make my life as horrible with your troublesome, difficult questions. Go for it. Clear? Therefore, Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. I'm excited for your questions for next week. See you in the next satsang.